All right, this is Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. A couple of months away from the presidential election. Things are getting increasingly hot, greater and greater polarization. And I've been working on a piece, a longer set of videos about the perils of the polarization of politicized perspectives. Yeah, I love alliterations. Right? It's the idea that the more polarized we are, the less stable society is, and that there is a way of looking at the perspectives that we each adopt in such a way that we actually create greater and greater stability. And so what's been coming to mind for me as I'm thinking about this is an essay that I wrote 5 years ago now about gun safety. Um, the title is something awkward that I don't remember right now, but I put a link to that blog post in the down below in YouTube. So you can check that out if you want. But the piece that I want to really look at here at this particular issue is that the perspectives that we bring to this and the polarization between them create a great amount of social instability. So one of the things I want to acknowledge here is that perspectives change. When I read back and I look at what it was that I wrote 5 years ago, and this is something that I was pretty serious about then. I mean, I took this proposal to Senator Claire McCaskill, spoke to one, I didn't speak to her, but I spoke to one of her aides. The aide said, hey, if we did this, this would probably work, but there's no political will for doing this. I mean, I'm the first to admit I'm pretty politically naive. We are just too polarized to be able to come together around gun safety. One of the things that I noticed when I was rereading my post was that I was using the term gun control and can't remember the other one that I used, gun violence. I really want to use the frame gun safety because that's more the middle place that we want to move to. So the polarization that we experience socially is between, on one hand, we have the gun rights folks, and on the other hand, we have the gun control, the gun abolition folks. And the gun rights folks, at the far end, at the extreme end of that continuum, they're folks who say, we will be safer if everyone's packing. If everyone has on their person at all times lethal force, then nobody's going to cause any trouble. On the other hand, we have the abolition folks who said nobody should be carrying a gun. They're dangerous, and we would be in a much safer society if nobody had these lethal weapons. Okay? That's the far fringe. Most people are someplace in the middle and are saying, well, given the number of firearms that we have, we really do need somebody who's going to be safe to carry a gun. One of the arguments on the gun rights folks is that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. And we do tend to agree that there are certain people who do have the right to carry a firearm. I just want to point out that this is the words of the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, which is a little awkward in terms of the wording. So let me just rewrite it slightly, kind of move the phrases around. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed because, and this is the really important thing for me, the security of a free state depends upon a well-regulated militia. Now we have to recognize that what was meant by a militia when they wrote this Second Amendment is very different than what we think of as a militia now. But that's all in the blog post. The crucial point here is this question of security. In the middle, there are people who agree that there are folks who have the right to bear arms because they're responsible for the security of a free state. We are safer when these people carry guns. Sometimes we don't feel safer when the police have a gun, but we want to have somebody around who can stop the bad guys. The military carries guns. So the question is, how do we do that responsibly? And how do we know who is responsible? And one of the distinctions that I think is really important to make in terms of how it is that we look at this problem is that we're not really talking about who has the right to own a gun. The question is who has the right to possess a firearm in public. And only those who have shown that they can be responsible in the use of that firearm should have the right. We need to be able to balance rights and responsibilities here, right? Such that we can create the well-being for the whole community. Let me just, okay. So the more we line up on either side of the street and argue with each other about whatever the issue is, the less stable things get. It's sort of like, if you've ever been canoeing, you know, one person leans left, so the other person leans right. And the further they lean, so I'm responding to the other person, the farther out I go, the less stable the boat is. And we get to a place where I can't move to the middle, because if I move to the middle, the boat's going to turn over. So we need to gently be able to find that middle ground. And I just want to suggest to you that when it comes to gun safety, the middle ground is the recognition that there are people who can be responsible in their use of a firearm, and thus do have and should have the right to possess them in public. But if you have not proven that you are responsible, then you should not have the right. And that's the issue that we need to come down on. The question becomes, how do we decide? How do we know who is, in fact, the good guy with the gun? How do we know who is responsible in their possession of the firearm such that it's actually in the best interests of the whole community that this person possess a firearm in public? The question is, how do we decide? And that's largely what the blog post is about, is what would be a mechanism for doing that. Right? But the point I want to make here is that when it comes to the perils of these politicized, polarized perspectives, the peril is addressed when we can find a way of thinking about the whole concern in a way that doesn't make one side lose or the other, but actually takes into account the validity of the perspectives of all of the parts. All right? We're going to come back to that more and more, but thanks for watching.